What happens when a movie turns into something more dangerous than the war it shows? A director nearly lost his mind and his money. A leading man had a heart attack mid-scene. A boy lied his way onto the boat at just 14. This is the cast of Apocalypse Now, Then and Now. Number 1. Martin Sheen as Captain Benjamin Willard, the hollow-eyed assassin sent up the river to do the unthinkable. That opening scene where Willard punches a mirror and smears blood across his face was not acting. Sheen was actually intoxicated. It was his real birthday, and that is his real blood. He begged Coppola to keep rolling. The bigger nightmare came later. At just 36, deep in the jungle and exhausted, Sheen suffered a heart attack so severe he had to crawl down a road to find help. Coppola hid it from the studio so nobody would pull the plug on the film. Sheen pulled through, finished the movie, and turned Willard into one of cinema's great cold stares. Roger Ebert called the film the best of 1979, and Sheen's weary narration is a huge reason it haunts you. Born in 1940, he is now 85 and somehow busier than ever. A whole new generation knows him as President Bartlett on The West Wing or the warm dad in Grace and Frankie. He has been married to Janet Templeton since 1961, an eternity by Hollywood standards, and all four of their children became actors, including Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen. In October 2025, he launched a podcast with his daughter Renee. The man who nearly died making this film is still talking, still working, still here. Number 2. Marlon Brando as Colonel Walter Kurtz, the rogue genius hiding in the heart of darkness. Brando was the biggest name on earth, and he behaved like it. He showed up in the Philippines weeks late, hugely overweight, and admitted he had not read the script or the Joseph Conrad novel the whole thing was built on. He was paid a staggering $2 million for roughly a month of work, plus a slice of the box office that pushed his total earnings near $9 million. That is God money for a man who barely knew his lines. Coppola got creative. He drowned Brando in shadow, dressed him in black, filmed only his face, and used a taller double for the body, turning a weight problem into a looming, mythical villain. Almost everything Kurtz says was improvised after Brando finally read the book in a single night. He also flat-out refused to share the set with Dennis Hopper, so their scenes were shot separately. The result is mesmerizing. That whispered final phrase, the horror, became one of the most quoted moments in film history. Brando proved that even at his most maddening, he could bend a masterpiece around himself. He passed away on July 1, 2004, at the age of 80, leaving behind a reputation as the most influential and most difficult actor of his century. Had he lived, he would be 102 in 2026. Love him or hate him, nobody ever looked away. Number 3. Robert Duvall as Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore, the surf-obsessed cavalry commander who does not flinch at a single bullet. Kilgore is on screen for only a slice of the movie, and he walks away with the entire thing. The helicopter assault set to Ride of the Valkyries is routinely voted one of the greatest scenes ever filmed, and his eulogy to napalm, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning," landed at number 12 on the American Film Institute's list of the best movie quotes of all time. Coppola first pictured Kilgore as a huge, towering man. Duvall, who is not that, talked his way into the role and walked off with the film's only acting Oscar nomination. Here is the heartbreaking part. Duvall passed away on February 15, 2026, at his farm in Middleburg, Virginia, with his wife Luciana Pedraza by his side. He was 95. This legend gave us Tom Hagen in The Godfather, an Oscar-winning turn in Tender Mercies, and decades of the most precise acting America ever produced. His family asked fans not to mourn with a big service, but to honor him by watching a great film, telling a good story around a table, or taking a drive in the countryside. So here is your chance. Few actors ever owned a scene the way he owned that beach. The smell of victory just got a little fainter. Rest easy, Colonel. Number 4. Lawrence Fishburne as Tyrone Mr. Clean Miller, the cocky teenage gunner who never makes it home. Here is one of the wildest casting stories in movie history. Fishburne wanted this role so badly that he lied straight to Coppola's face, claiming he was 16. The truth was, he was only 14 years old. The shoot dragged on so long that by the time the film hit theaters in 1979, Fishburne had actually turned 17, the same age as his character. He later joked that he did not think he fooled anybody. That jungle became his film school. Coppola called Fishburne Forrest, and young Sam Bottoms, a little family that went through thick and thin without complaining. The boy from that boat grew into a giant. He became Morpheus in The Matrix and rewired what an action hero could be. He earned an Oscar nomination for What's Love Got to Do with It, then stacked up 3 Emmys and a Tony Award, a level of range almost nobody touches. He is still everywhere, popping up in the John Wick films and the 2025 thriller The Amateur. In 2025, a DNA test on the show Finding Your Roots revealed that the man he was named after was not his biological father, a discovery he met with real grace. Born in 1961, he is now 64 and still one of the most commanding voices on screen. Not bad for a kid who talked his way onto a war. Number 5. Dennis Hopper as the unnamed photojournalist, the babbling, camera-draped disciple who greets Willard at the end of the river. This character did not even exist on paper. Hopper was originally cast as Colby, a defected soldier, but once Coppola saw him on set, talking non-stop and clearly living in his own electric universe, he tore up the plan. He hung a pile of Nikon cameras around Hopper's neck, gave him a peasant shirt, and let him riff. Almost every word, including the T.S. Eliot poetry, was improvised. Hopper was a chaos engine on that production, and his feud with Brando became the stuff of legend. Brando reportedly could not stand him and refused to be on set at the same time, which is why their big scene was shot on separate nights. When Kurtz hurls a book at the photographer and calls him a mutt, you sense that might be Brando's real opinion bleeding through. Hopper was already a counterculture icon from Easy Rider, and he would later terrify a generation as the villain in Blue Velvet. He died on May 29, 2010, at the age of 74 after a battle with cancer, a true Hollywood wildman right to the end. Had he lived, he would be 90 in 2026. Audiences either find his performance here brilliant or grating, and that split is exactly the point. The man brought pure, unfiltered madness to a film already drowning in it. Few actors ever burned that bright. Number 6. Harrison Ford as Colonel G. Lucas, the clipped intelligence officer who hands Willard his deadly assignment. Blink, and you might miss him. Ford has a tiny early role here, and the character's name is a sly inside joke, a tribute to George Lucas, who directed Ford in American Graffiti and Star Wars, and was once attached to direct this very film. At the time, Ford was still building his name. Then he became, well, Harrison Ford, arguably the most bankable movie star who ever lived, the man behind Han Solo, Indiana Jones, and Rick Deckard. The wild part is that at 83 he is not coasting, he is everywhere. He earns a reported $1 million per episode on the Yellowstone prequel 1923. He scored his first ever Emmy nomination for the Apple comedy Shrinking, and he stepped into the Marvel Universe as Thaddeus Ross, the Red Hulk, in Captain America Brave New World in 2025. In March 2026, he received the SAG Life Achievement Award, where he reminded everyone he was no overnight success and spent 15 years bouncing between acting and carpentry jobs. His fortune now sits around $300 million. He is also a licensed pilot who has flown real rescue missions near his Wyoming ranch. Born in 1942, he is proof that a one-scene bit part is not destiny. The smallest role on this list belonged to the biggest star of them all. Funny how the jungle hides its future legends. Number 7. Frederick Forrest as J. Chef Hicks, the wound-up New Orleans cook who just wanted to make sauces, not fight a war. Chef gives the film its most relatable terror. He is a regular guy who never asked for any of this, and his total meltdown after a surprise run-in with a tiger is both hilarious and genuinely unsettling. "I didn't come here for this," he screams. "All I wanted to do was cook." Forrest spent over a year in the Philippines on this brutal shoot, and later described his own mental state as almost catatonic. That exhaustion is right there on screen. The same year this came out, Forrest earned an Academy Award nomination for playing Bette Midler's love interest in The Rose, a 1-2 punch that should have made him a leading man. It never quite happened, and he settled into a long, respected run as a character actor and a favorite of Coppola, who also used him in The Conversation and Tucker. Forrest passed away on June 23, 2023, at his home in Santa Monica at the age of 86 after a long illness. Midler announced his death herself, calling him a brilliant human being who was at peace. Coppola said the loss was heartbreaking. Forrest had no children. Had he lived, he would turn 90 in 2026. Chef's fate in the film is grim, but Forrest gave him a beating heart. Sometimes the side character is the soul of the whole thing. Number 8. Sam Bottoms as Lance B. Johnson, the golden surfer who slowly drifts out of his own mind. Lance is at the center of the film's most insane image, the moment a war-zone beach is bombed so that a famous surfer can ride the waves while bullets fly. Charlie don't surf. Bottoms played him wide-eyed and innocent at first, then watched him dissolve into a glassy-eyed shadow as the river swallows the crew. He was just 20 when he landed the role, and like everyone else, he paid a price for the chaos in the Philippines. He caught a nasty parasite during filming that reportedly wrecked his liver. Bottoms came from a serious acting bloodline. His brother Timothy was the lead in The Last Picture Show, and Sam actually got his own start in that film as a teenager after being spotted on a street corner by director Peter Bogdanovich. Coppola adored him, calling him an especially likable young man who never complained. Sadly, his story ended far too soon. Sam Bottoms died on December 16, 2008, at his home in Los Angeles after a fight with brain cancer. He was only 53. Had he lived, he would turn 71 in 2026. He left behind a wife and 2 daughters and a run of memorable roles in films like The Outlaw Josie Wales. Of all the young faces on that boat, his innocence cut the deepest. The surfer never made it back to shore. Number 9. Albert Hall as Chief Petty Officer George Phillips, the steady hand, steering the boat straight into hell. The chief is the closest thing the crew has to a father, a by-the-book leader who clashes with Willard over who is really in charge. His death is one of the film's most shocking gut punches. Impaled by a spear thrown from the riverbank, he uses his last moment to try and drag Willard down onto the bloody point with him. It is savage and unforgettable. Hall took the role seriously, researching what Vietnam was actually like. Yet he remembered the shoot fondly, calling the Philippines exotic, and the whole experience all fun. He, Fishburne, and Bottoms all signed 7-year contracts with Coppola. After The River, Hall built a long and dignified career. He played Brother Baines opposite Denzel Washington in Spike Lee's Malcolm X, and a whole generation of television viewers knew him as the stern Judge Seymour Walsh across Ally McBeal and The Practice. He also turned up in family favorites like Rookie of the Year. Hall stepped away from acting around 2011, and good news, he is still with us. Born in 1937, he is now 88 years old, one of the surviving anchors of this entire cast. He never chased the spotlight, he just delivered, every single time. The chief held that crew together, and Hall held more than a few films together too. A quiet master who deserves a lot more credit. Number 10. Scott Glenn as Captain Richard Colby, the officer sent to kill Kurtz, who instead joined him. Colby is the ghost of Willard's possible future. He was given the exact mission Willard now carries, but he fell under Kurtz's spell, sent his wife a chilling letter telling her to sell everything they owned and that he was never coming home, and now stands among the compound's silent, broken believers. He barely speaks, yet he haunts the whole final act. Here is a fun twist. Colby is the very role Dennis Hopper was first cast in before Coppola flipped Hopper into the photographer instead. Glenn took it and ran. He went on to a knockout career, playing astronaut Alan Shepard in The Right Stuff, FBI boss Jack Crawford in The Silence of the Lambs, and tough guys in The Hunt for Red October, Backdraft, and Training Day. Marvel fans know him as the blind mentor Stick in Daredevil. A genuine former Marine, he is still going strong. In 2025, he stole scenes as the frail, sinister resort owner Jim Hollinger in Season 3 of The White Lotus, and snagged an Emmy nomination, then headlined the film Eugene the Marine. Now in his mid-80s, he remains one of the most quietly intimidating presences in the business. Colby never broke free of Kurtz, but Glenn broke out in a huge way, proof that the smallest, strangest roles can launch the longest careers. Number 11. G.D. Spradlin as Lieutenant General Corman, the smooth, chilling officer who orders Willard to commit the assassination over a quiet lunch. Corman is the polished face of the war machine. He hands down a death sentence while passing the shrimp, and his speech about how the jungle tempts a man to play God sets up the entire moral fog of the film. The character's name is a wink at Roger Corman, the legendary B-movie producer who gave a young Coppola his first real shot. Spradlin's own backstory is one of the most surprising on this list. He was not a lifelong actor at all. He made a small fortune in the Oklahoma oil business and worked on political campaigns before turning to Hollywood in his 40s, where his quiet authority made him perfect for generals, senators, and crooked power brokers. In fact, he played another corrupt official for Coppola, the slimy Senator Geary, in The Godfather Part 2. Spradlin passed away on July 24, 2011, in California, at the age of 90. Had he lived, he would be 105 in 2026. He spent decades being the guy you instantly distrusted on screen, and he was magnificent at it. There is something perfect about an oil tycoon playing the calm, suited man who sends a soldier off to kill. Corman never fires a shot, yet he sets the whole nightmare in motion. The villain in the clean uniform is often the scariest one of all. Number 12. Lee Ermey as a helicopter pilot, a tiny uncredited role that hid one of the most explosive talents in movie history. You might not even spot him here, but Ermey was on this production doing double duty, flying a 1st Cavalry chopper and serving as a military technical advisor, a job he earned because he was the real thing. Ermey was a genuine United States Marine and Vietnam veteran who had been a drill instructor, and Apocalypse Now was one of his first film gigs, shot like so many of his early roles in the Philippines. Then came the part that made him a legend. On Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, Ermey was again hired only as a technical advisor, but he improvised insults so brutal and so perfect that Kubrick handed him the role of Gunnery Sergeant Hartman. He wrote more than half his own dialogue and earned a Golden Globe nomination, a once-in-a-lifetime jump from consultant to icon. After that, he was everywhere, voicing the toy soldier Sarge in the Toy Story films and chilling audiences in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Ermey died on April 15, 2018, at the age of 74 from complications of pneumonia. Born in 1944, he would be 82 in 2026. He turned real military fury into an art form, and it all started with a few small jobs in the same jungle as this film. The drill sergeant of our nightmares got his start as a face in a chopper. Number 13. Colleen Camp as Miss May, one of the entertainers flown in to perform for the troops at the Surreal Supply Depot show. That sequence is a fever dream, a burst of Hollywood glamour dropped into the middle of a war, and it sends the soldiers into a frenzy. Here is a hidden gem. Before acting, Camp worked as a bird trainer at Busch Gardens, and Coppola actually used her real bird handling skills in an expanded version of this scene. The part nearly went to Linda Carter, but Carter was locked into her Wonder Woman contract, so Camp stepped in. Most of her footage was cut from the original 1979 release and only restored years later in the Redux edition. While that may have stung at the time, Camp built a remarkable career. She became a beloved character actress in Clue, Wayne's World, Die Hard with a Vengeance, and Election, racking up well over 100 film roles. Then she reinvented herself again as a producer, and, fascinatingly, as one of the most powerful awards season strategists in Hollywood, with her fingerprints on Oscar campaigns for films like Parasite. Born in 1953, she is now 73 and still a relentless force in the business, both on-screen and behind the curtain. The woman whose big scene got cut became one of the people who quietly helped decide who wins Oscars. That is one of the great glow-ups in this entire cast. Never count out the person on the edge of the frame. Number 14. Jerry Ziesmer, as the quiet civilian in the briefing room, the man who speaks the most bone-chilling line in the entire film. He sits silently while the generals talk, a mysterious government type in plain clothes, and then he leans in and delivers 4 cold words that launch the whole mission. Terminate, with extreme prejudice. That single line became one of the most quoted phrases in war movie history, a perfect piece of bureaucratic menace. And here is the secret. The man who said it was not really an actor at all. Jerry Ziesmer was the film's assistant director. Coppola had searched for months for the right face for that tiny part, then, on the spur of the moment, handed it to the guy already helping run the set. Ziesmer spent his career as one of the busiest behind-the-scenes professionals in Hollywood, working as an assistant director on more than 50 films, including Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Scarface, Midnight Run, Almost Famous, and Jerry Maguire. He occasionally took small acting parts in projects he worked on, but nothing ever topped this. Ziesmer passed away on August 1, 2021, at the age of 82. Born in 1939, he would be 87 in 2026. It is a beautiful piece of trivia that the most lethal sentence in this masterpiece came from a crew member who just happened to be in the right place. Sometimes the most famous line in a film belongs to the man holding the clipboard. Number 15. Francis Ford Coppola, the director who gambled everything he had and nearly lost his mind getting this film made. The making of Apocalypse Now is its own legend of suffering. A typhoon flattened the sets. His star had a heart attack. Brando showed up unprepared and overweight. The real Philippine military kept flying its helicopters off to fight an actual war mid-scene. Coppola shot an unbelievable 1.5 million feet of film, blew far past his budget, and put his own money and home on the line to finish. He later admitted he felt there was only about a 20% chance he could pull it off, and the pressure pushed him to a mental breaking point. Then he premiered it unfinished at the Cannes Film Festival and walked away with the Palme d'Or, the top prize in world cinema. The film went on to gross around $150 million worldwide and is now considered one of the greatest ever made. Here is the jaw-dropping part. Nearly 45 years later, Coppola did the exact same thing again. He poured more than $100 million of his own fortune into his 2024 passion project Megalopolis, which grossed only about $14 million and forced him to sell wineries, a private island, and a collection of rare watches. His beloved wife Eleanor passed away that same year. Born in 1939, he is now 87 and still betting it all on art. The man who made this masterpiece never learned to play it safe. Maybe that is exactly why it is a masterpiece. Number 16. John Milius, the wild man screenwriter who dreamed this whole nightmare up in the first place. Long before Coppola stepped in, it was Milius who took Joseph Conrad's old novel and reimagined it inside the Vietnam War, writing the very first script as a film student at USC back in 1968. And the lines he gave this movie are immortal. "I love the smell of napalm in the morning" simply came to him out of nowhere. "Charlie Don't Surf" was inspired by a real comment from Israeli General Ariel Sharon. Milius and Coppola earned an Academy Award nomination for the screenplay, and that napalm line alone is now burned into pop culture. Milius is a fascinating, larger-than-life character. He desperately wanted to be a Marine, but was rejected because of his asthma, so he poured all that warrior energy into his writing instead. He went on to create Conan the Barbarian and Red Dawn and helped shape the Dirty Harry films. He was even the real-life inspiration for the loud, gun-loving Walter in the Coen brothers' film The Big Lebowski. Sadly, recent news is heavy. As of 2025, Milius was battling terminal pancreatic cancer, and his old friend Arnold Schwarzenegger publicly rallied around him, sharing his unfilmed scripts as motivation. Born in 1944, he is now 82. The man wrote some of the most quoted dialogue in film history and lived as boldly as his characters. Without his imagination, that famous river never even existed. Number 17. Vittorio Storaro, the Italian master who painted this film with light and won an Oscar for it. If Apocalypse Now looks like a hypnotic, burning fever dream, that is Storaro. His camera work earned the Academy Award for Best Cinematography, and almost every critic who dismissed parts of the story still bowed down to how it looked. He built the visuals around a deep philosophy of color and shadow, drawing on ideas as wild as tarot symbolism and the clash of natural and artificial light to mirror the war's madness. That haunting opening, where a ceiling fan melts into spinning helicopter blades over a jungle erupting in orange flame, is pure Storaro. So is the choice to bury Kurtz in deep shadow, turning Brando into a looming god. Look closely during the chaotic beach battle, and you can even spot Storaro himself in a cameo, playing the cameraman standing right next to Coppola. He is no one-film wonder either. Storaro is one of the greatest cinematographers who ever lived, with 3 Academy Awards on his shelf for this film, Reds, and The Last Emperor. Now 86, born in 1940, he has kept shooting movies well into his later years, including a run of films for Woody Allen. The actors get the fame, but Storaro is a huge reason this film feels like a waking dream. Great movies are not just written and acted, they are lit. And nobody ever lit a war quite like this. Number 18. Michael Herr, the war reporter, whose words became the haunting voice inside Willard's head. The film almost did not have narration at all. Coppola dropped the idea during filming, then realized in post-production that the movie did not hold together without it. So in early 1978, he called Michael Herr, and that changed everything. Hare was not some Hollywood writer. He was a real war correspondent who had actually covered Vietnam on the ground, and his 1977 book Dispatches is still regarded as one of the greatest, rawest pieces of writing the war ever produced. Coppola asked him to build the film's narration out of that same haunted, poetic voice. The result is that low, weary monologue that drifts through the whole movie and ties its fractured pieces into one nightmare. The film even borrowed its mood and texture from Dispatches in the first place. Hare's gift for capturing the strange, terrifying rhythm of that war was unmatched, and he later brought it to Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, which he co-wrote. Michael Hare passed away on June 23, 2016, at the age of 76. Strangely, that is the very same calendar date Frederick Forrest would die 7 years later. Had he lived, Hare would be 86 in 2026. You hear plenty of voices in this film, but his is the one whispering in the dark, guiding you up the river. The words made the madness make sense. So there it is, the cast that survived the most cursed shoot in movie history. Some became legends, some left us too soon, and the director nearly lost everything twice. Now I want to hear from you. Which performance hit hardest? The quiet chief, the manic photographer, or Kilgore on that beach? Drop it below. And here is the real fight. Many call this the greatest war film ever made, yet others argue it glorifies the very chaos it claims to condemn. So tell me, is Apocalypse Now a true masterpiece or a beautiful lie?